Welcome to all the seekers of secrets in the Story with AI channel. Today, we dive into the world of Etheria, a world teeming with power struggles. But what if the real power is not in the hands of the belligerents, but buried under the dust in a place forgotten by legends? Khaled, our wise adventurer, has found the key, the dragon skin scroll that refers to Eldora, the land of giants and the repository of magical tools capable of reshaping existence. The journey in search of the Hammer of Genesis and the Mirror of Time begins from the scariest place, the Valley of Shadows. Watch to see how Khaled will cross the flaming lava river to reveal the secret of the giants. The world of Etheria was not just a continent, but a giant theater teetering on the edge of an abyss. The dim lights of the big cities did not hide the darkness creeping from the outskirts, a darkness whose source was only the thirsty hearts and strength of men. Etheria has become a hotbed of three opposing forces: the Shadowcron Empire, which built its glory on the blood of ancient magic; the kingdoms of the Iron Ring, seeking to bury every trace of the mysterious force and replace it with the machine; and the Free Whisper factions, eager to restore the lost balance. Each side was scrambling for influence, and every straw of power could tip the scales and plunge Etheria into a war that will not last and will not wither. At the heart of this chaos, there was one man who saw the bigger picture. Khaled, not just an adventurer, but an echo of an old poem. His name was whispered in shabby taverns and halls of kings alike. His tales went beyond the borders of cities and touched the edge of legends. His hideout, the location of which is known only to him, was nothing but an old library surrounded by oblivion. The smell of aged paper and old leather filled the atmosphere. Here, far from the bustle and raging stupidity of Etheria, Khaled was sitting with a strange concentration, dressed in light, crystallized suede armor, lighting dim candles whose light was not enough to completely expel the shadows. In his hands, there was not an ordinary map, but an antique and shocking piece of leather, the burnt dragon skin scroll. The scroll was heavy and rough to the touch. Every spot in it bore the hardness of 1,000 years. The smell of lingering sulfur and forgotten history was emanating from her, like a piece of primordial existence. This skin was said to belong to the last dragon that flew through the Etherian sky before its mysterious disappearance, which makes the scroll in itself an invaluable treasure. The drawings on the skin were not ordinary maps. They did not bear the names of valleys or trade routes. Instead, enormous and incomprehensible to the common people symbols were inscribed on it. A mountain range whose peaks reach beyond the clouds is called the Terax Mountains, and red zigzag lines intertwining like flaming rivers are called Naroth. But the symbol that caught Khaled's eye was the one that was exactly in the middle, a giant symbol surrounded by a halo of unbridled power. This was the Eldora, the forgotten land of the giants. Eldora, according to legends, was a repository of magical tools like no other, tools capable of reshaping existence, among which were the Hammer of the Formation of Existence, the Mirror of Time, and the Ring of Eternal Concealment. The giants suddenly disappeared, leaving their powers under the dust, and their secret remained faithfully waiting for whoever found it. Khaled sighed softly, a piercing look in his eyes. He was not looking for gold or personal fame. He was able to earn huge fortunes using his combat skills and sharp wit, but something deeper was driving him. Khaled's intention was both noble and dangerous. He believed that these magical tools were not the property of a faction or an empire, but the common property of mankind. In a world tending towards darkness due to the growing powers of the Shadowcron and the cruel power of the Iron Ring, the return of this forgotten force was the only chance to restore the balance of power and avoid the impending catastrophe. "It's not theft. It's a recovery," Khaled whispered to himself, as if justifying his decision to the world. Khaled looked at the map one last time. The route started from the deepest point of the Valley of Shadows, where the gate of Eldora was said to have been closed forever. A valley that even the most intrepid warriors feared, it plunges into a permanent darkness that sunlight does not penetrate. The crossing point indicated by a burnt symbol was the Naroth, the river of glowing lava boiling underground, which for mythology served as the silent gate of hell. Khalid put the map aside. It's time for a decisive and condemned decision. His reflective sword grabbed the blade, which was reflecting the dim candlelight with a deceptive luster. He fastened his chain of hooks made of light metal mithril around his waist, hooks specially made for such impossible adventures. It was not a farewell, because there was no one to say goodbye to, but a leap into the unknown. Khalid extinguished the candles one by one and left his old library, leaving his well-known world behind. He stepped into the darkness of the night, into the Valley of Shadows. Khalid has made his decision. It was a journey without return, a journey to the land of the giants, to become the hero who will face the darkness with the forgotten power. As soon as Khalid took his first step into the Valley of Shadows, he felt as if the world had swallowed his light. The darkness was not just the absence of the sun, but a thick and gloomy substance, drowning everything around him in a permanent darkness broken only by the faint reflections of stars that he was not even sure existed. The valley was known as the place that swallows hope, and here it proves its worthiness by name. The first 3 days of Khalid's journey went like an eternity, feeding on dry plates of pressed biscuits and carefully preserved drops of water in his flask. Everything was unnaturally silent, a silence that almost screamed in the adventurer's ears, forcing Khalid to rely entirely on his sense of touch, and his inner sense of the dangers that might lurk in this blindness. The dragon skin scroll, which he did not let go of, was his only compass. As soon as he approached his destination, the symbols painted on the skin began to glow faintly with a faint blush, as if the skin itself remembers the heat it once experienced. Those glowing symbols led him to the inevitable end of the valley, where the plain, drowned in shadow, turned into a huge crack in the earth's crust. Khalid stopped at the edge, and the only look he was wearing was a mixture of reverence and anticipation. At the bottom there was not just a pit, but the site itself was the silent gate of hell, which he knew from mythology as Naroth. Naroth, a river of glowing lava, boiling and swirling with little sound, as if an evil being had contented itself with silence to be more threatening. The heat here was not ordinary, but hellish heat, so intense that it makes breathing a pure torment. The moisture in the air gathered suffocatingly, and the smell of sulfur turned into a painful tingling in the nose and eyes. Khalid felt a cold sweat pouring down his forehead, even though his skin was boiling under his armor made of crystallized suede. The gateway to Eldora was this enormous crack. There was no bridge, not even the remains of a bridge. Only a chain of black volcanic rocks of varying sizes slowly floats on the surface of the glowing lava. Each of the rocks was a small and condemned island, constantly moving with the slow current of the Naroth, making any attempt to cross look like a planned suicide. Khalid realized that strength alone would not be enough here. He sat on the edge of the fissure, studied the movement of lava for more than 2 hours, watching the dancing of floating rocks. It was more like a chess game with the destructive forces of nature. He must calculate the distance, the angle of throw, and the speed of the rock, and every mistake meant falling into inevitable death. In his hand, he held his hook chain made of mithril metal, a light silver metal that withstands high heat. Each hook was sharpened and designed to penetrate into the harshest rocks. The crossing began. His first step was the most difficult. He threw the first hook with uncanny accuracy towards a rock 10 meters away from him, and before the rock settled in its new position, Khalid jumped up and grabbed the chain. Then, in a lightning acrobatic movement, he swung like a hand over the blazing inferno. His arm muscles were groaning under his weight, and he had to free himself at just the right moment to land on another floating rock. The process was repeated over and over again. Extrusion, fixation, swing, landing. The sound of the mithril chain rubbing against the rock was the only sound that broke through the frightening silence of Naroth. Khalid's heart was beating with a force that resembled war drums, focusing all his senses on balance and distance. His eyes, despite the stress, were watching the red-yellow glow rising from the river, which illuminated his face with a rigid and insistent expression. In the middle of the river, a small disaster occurred that almost ended the whole journey. As Khalid was preparing to land on a small, sloping rock, his shoe inadvertently slipped. Not all of it fell, but the tip of his thick leather boots touched the surface of the glowing lava for a second. The second was enough. The tip of the shoe immediately caught fire. The piece of leather turned into a small flame, while Khalid felt a burning sting through the layers of his clothes. But as if it were part of his instinctive skill, he did not lose his balance. He freed himself in the air, skillfully turned around, and the reflective sword used the blade to hit the tip of the flaming shoe and throw it into the lava that instantly swallowed him. Khalid landed on the next rock with one leg intact and the other damaged, but survived. He had to learn not to make such a naive mistake again. After an immeasurably long time, the crossing seemed like a nightmarish dream. But with every wrong step or dangerous move, Khalid's determination was redoubled, and when he threw out his hook for the last time, he settled on the opposite rocky bank. Khalid pulled himself up, climbing the crevice that served as the ledge of the Eldora. He fell to the barren ground, exhausted, almost gasping for breath from the heat and stress. The smell of sulfur was still filling his lungs, but he felt a silent, overwhelming euphoria. He triumphed over the impossible, leaving behind the Naroth River as a silent witness to his first existential test. Khalid looked up as the giant rock pillars of the Terax Mountains began to loom on the horizon, looking like the fingers of giants pointing towards the sky. The hardest part was over, but the most cruel part was waiting for him. He has reached the bank, and now the ascent journey has begun. Khalid was able to survive with his wit and ingenuity from the silent gate of hell, but this crossing was only a prelude. Now, the mighty Terax Mountains are unfolding in front of him, which is the first step to getting to the treasures of Eldora. Will he find the power that will enable him to save Etheria, and what price will he pay? The story is not over yet. Support us with like and subscribe to keep the story going, and wait for the second part, in which we will reveal the scary secrets hidden by the mountain peaks of the giants.